Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalam ala nabiyillah. So I want to talk about something interesting, which is some Sharia surprises. The Sharia comes with some surprises, and this is something that the more and more I study Sharia, the more and more I'm baffled by it. And there are so many beautiful things that I find in the Sharia that we would just not we would not expect this. And there's a certain level of wisdom that is within the Sharia that only comes from the Creator Himself. Because we would think, oh, maybe we could do it this way, maybe we could do it this way, but the Creator gave us the guidelines for His creation, and because of this, we can see when we look at the Sharia, we'll find that there's a beautiful wisdom. Maybe somebody doesn't like the Sharia, and this is just because they're following their own desires and they don't want to obey the Creator. But for someone who's honest between themselves, and they're honest with what the creator has laid down as guidelines, and they accept that they are the creation, and so they're expected to act a certain way, then of course they will see the beauty of this and the wisdom inside the Sharia. So fornication, of course, has a penalty ascribed to it, which is well known in Islam, and depending on the case, whether the person has been married previously or he hasn't been married. But how do we establish that punishment? And that punishment only comes in a few different ways. One of the ways is that the person says for himself, oh, I did it. And he comes up openly in public and says this to like a judge and whatnot. Then, okay, then he will have the punishment established to him because he's the one who came up out of his own free will and said, I did it. So if he makes it a public affair, it becomes a public affair. If he kept it a private affair between him and Allah, then it stays a private affair between him and Allah. And so if somebody does bring it up, then this is when it becomes a public affair, then it gets taken care of publicly with an actual punishment. And so this is the way that Sharia works about. But what about if somebody sees somebody else doing fornication, or they think that someone else was fornicating, or they see that this woman got pregnant and they think it's not from the husband, for instance. So is there a way to actually prove that this woman was fornicating? In the Sharia, there's a way to prove that someone was fornicating. There's only one way to prove that the other person was fornicating. It's by eyewitness. And so you have to have an eyewitness that saw it this way. Of course, there's one thing with a husband. There's a special case with the husband. He can swear by Allah and then ask that Allah's curse be on him if he is lying about his claim on her, and she can do the same thing. And then this will basically nullify any punishment being on either of them, and then they'll be separated. This is a different case. But otherwise, there has to be 4 witnesses for someone that sees the act actually occurring. They can't just see people with each other. They can't just see someone on someone. They have to see the actual something in something. And so this has to actually be seen with eyewitnesses, or else there's no punishment that would ever be put on somebody without them saying it for themselves. And so this is of the beauty of the Sharia. And I remember having discussion with some people. Some people were talking about, oh, what about affirming with DNA that this is not someone's kid, or that this is somebody's kid? Why can't we just do it this way? And the Sharia only has one way of affirming, whether or not somebody is one's kids. The way that they affirm, the Sharia affirms that this person's a kid, is if it's born in wedlock between this man and this woman. If it's born to this woman while she's in wedlock with this person, this is his kid. And for us to say that this is other than his kid, we don't take DNA. We don't take DNA. And this is something some people were talking about. They're like, oh, we don't take DNA. Why not? This is a certainty. Why don't we use DNA as a proof to see that this woman actually did fornication, and then establish upon her or put other rulings according to the fact that she fornicated. And then I came across something very, very interesting where someone was talking about this issue, and they talked about something very interesting of a scientific anomaly that kind of happens when it comes to these issues, especially when we're talking about DNA. So DNA is, while it's pretty conclusive, we can understand, okay, if you're coming from your mother, then you got to have the DNA of your mother. And this makes sense. And so there is a certain case of it's called chimerism. I hope I'm saying it properly. But this particular case is where a mother, or any person, it could be a regular person, has multiple DNAs inside of himself. And so so the mother could have a certain part of DNA that's inside of her body and with some organs or certain parts of her organs, and then the other part of the organs would be a different DNA. And so this is an interesting case, because there was a case back in the day where Lydia Fairchild, it's like 2002, that she failed a DNA test that her child wasn't her child. Weird. And this is, of course, like, of course, people the other way around, like if having a man fail his DNA test that this is his child or not, then they're wondering who's his daddy. And that whole line of filth, it's really filth, like to bring this up in the public and then destroy families because of this, because of a DNA test. um and so it's a mother, and then this DNA test said that this is not her kid. How can this? If it came out of her, it's got to be her kid for the most part. Like, the only way is like some artificial insemination with somebody else's egg. So how would this happen? And so they went through that and they tried this, and then they realized that her reproductive tissues had a distinct DNA profile due to chimerism. And so this is very interesting because she had this, or chimerism, and so she had this particular case. And how could you say that this mother who gave birth, and then they're going to be claimed that, okay, this is not my child, that's not her child, that's somebody else's child, and then they're not going to have all this, they're going to have a bunch of issues because of this. And of course, the opposite could definitely happen as well. And so this case of chimerism proves that, like, this DNA is not something we can put stock into and put a ruling from, or like an actual ruling. And this ruling, I think about the rulings that actually came in, like this case scenario, and in other many cases in the West and whatnot. There's legal rulings that come down based on these DNA findings. So they'll get a DNA test and they'll prove, okay, this person is this person's kid, or he's not this person's kid. Well, maybe a lot of times this can be right. A lot of times there could be a lot of mistakes in this. There could be a mistake, whether or not it's a mistake within the handling of the samples, or whether it's a mistake with this, like chimerism. And how can you actually find chimerism too? And this is an interesting way. You won't really know that someone has chimerism. Like, the only way you could actually, like, know that someone has chimerism is to test every single part of their body with that DNA to make sure that that's that DNA. And so, like, and for someone to get every single part of their body checked for DNA to make sure that they don't have two different types of DNA in their body is very, like, it's impossible for someone to really go through that. Um, and so then to rely on DNA, it shows that it's not a good reliable source. And this is why when some of the fuqaha, they came up and they started talking about, they would say, okay, yeah, we're not going to use DNA to prove that someone fornicated. We can't do this to prove zina. We can't do this. And when also the same thing, like, we don't use DNA to prove that someone is someone else's child, or that he's not someone else's child. We don't use this. And yes, while it can be like a secondary clue to kind of point towards something, we can't use it as something that actually bases a ruling on it. And this is something that Islam has totally cut off any channel to proving that someone fornicated, except for eyewitnesses that look at it, or this person claims it for themselves, or the husband, he has such reason to believe it that he swears 5 oaths between him and Allah that Allah's curse will be on him if he's lying. And of course, this is a very serious affair. And so, and then she could do the same if this case happened. She could do the same, that she would swear before Allah that he's lying, or that Allah would be angry on me. And so, and this is the beauty of the Sharia, to keep people's families together, and to keep these things where we don't assume we don't go to these types of assumptions of assuming infidelity. And for someone also, just a note is, like, for somebody to come out and say so and so was fornicating with so and so, or to have these allegations, this is something that is completely haram in Islam. And in fact, it's not just haram like we say, oh, don't do it. No, there's a legal punishment for slandering. And this is the beauty of Islam and the Sharia, is that the Sharia, it doesn't allow people to just go run their mouths about the rest of the world. You can't just have someone come out and say, "Oh, this person's sleeping with so and so," or "I think this person's sleeping with so and so because of an FBI report, or because of this, that, the other," or "We went and dug into their phone and found these pictures or something." This is not evidence in Sharia. If somebody says so and so slept with so and so, this person now deserves to be flogged 40 lashes. And so that's like, and of course this would be publicly. It's a public, he publicly distorted the view of people according to this other person by running his mouth about this person, saying that that person was fornicating or something. And so now he's going to be subject to this. And this is the beauty of the Sharia, that it cares about the families. It cares about making sure that these issues that are very sensitive issues are dealt with in the most proper and absolute matters ways. So this is it's definitely an interesting thing that I came across, and there's many other things I come across when I look at the Sharia when it comes to like animal rights. What does the Sharia have to talk about animal rights? There's many interesting things, and inshallah in future videos I'll bring some little snippets about interesting things that the Sharia can just blow your mind about. So surprises in the Sharia. Stay tuned for more of these surprises. If you like this video, you find it beneficial, then like it and subscribe to the channel so that you can see more of these things. And also, if you have a comment on something, feel free to comment on the bottom as long as it's appropriate, you know. And also, if you want to support the work, then feel free to support me on my Patreon, which a link will be provided as well. And thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.